welcome back to another episode of Path to Rainbow. Today we are going to be talking about all of the hair dyes that I have ever used and telling you all of the pros and cons about each of those. As I've said in my previous video, Salon versus DIY, I mentioned that I do highly recommend bleaching your hair at a salon rather than doing it at home unless you are just touching up your roots or perhaps you have a full head of virgin hair. Then I think it will be a little bit easier to manage bleaching your hair at home. If you do end up bleaching your hair at home, the product that I use to tone my hair is Wella T18, and it is very tried and true. I almost never ever stray from it. Highly recommend that. With that aside, today we are going to be focusing on semi-permanent hair dyes. Since this video might get a little bit long, I am going to break it down into sections. I am going to talk about the brands that I love, the brands that I hate, and we're going to be going over some of my old pictures so I can talk to you about how I achieved each of those looks, what colors I used, how I mixed them, how long they last, and we're also going to be talking about how each of those colors fade because this is always something that I am curious about when I am purchasing a new color. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Brands that I love. My favorite semi-permanent hair dyes are Arctic Fox and Manic Panic. The great things about Arctic Fox is that they have very long-lasting, vibrant colors that are also very easy to blend. However, I do find that it is harder to get these in person where I live, whereas Manic Panic is readily available. Manic Panic also has a very wide range of vibrant colors, but I find that they don't last as long as the Arctic Foxes, and they don't blend as well as the Arctic Foxes. And when I say blend, I mean when you paint on your hair, Manic Panic will stay more or less where you put it. So if I had a streak going right here of purple and I wanted to blend into pink, you will see the streak that I painted. So what you'll have to do is to be more aware of how you lay down your colors. Whereas I do feel like with the Arctic Foxes that I have tried, the colors do tend to melt together as you wash them off. But with both of these, a little goes a long way, so even if you just have a small tub like this, there is a high chance that you'll be able to use it for a long time, especially if they are a darker color, a more vibrant color that you are diluting or mixing with other things. With pastel shades, however, they do tend to be more diluted, so they won't last as long as their vibrant counterparts. Now with the brands I hate, I'm so sorry to say this because they do always seem so promising whenever I am shopping for hair color. I'm looking at all these swatches and I'm like, that looks good. But I do find that Ion is quite a hit or miss. You do tend to need a lot of it. It's more of like a toothpaste consistency, whereas Arctic Fox and Manic Panic is more like a hair mask feeling. You'll need to buy more tubes of it in order to get the color you want. And sometimes the color outcomes don't look like the color swatches you see in the store. I've also encountered times where I've spent hours dyeing my hair with an Ion hair dye and the result didn't really look any different from before I dyed it, which is extremely disappointing because it does require a lot of time and effort. So this is a brand I do not recommend. I know that some people have had successes with them, but personally, I don't think I'll ever be shopping with them ever again. Some other colors I have tried that I neither love or hate are the one and only Argan Oil Hair Dye. The semi-permanent hair color that I tried with the Argan Oil line is the Pastel Lilac. I don't feel like it's very pigmented, but I do tend to mix it into other colors to kind of tone them down. I've also tried a couple of their permanent hair colors and those did not last long at all, but that is just the reality of permanent hair dyes. Sometimes they last, sometimes they don't, but they do tend to stain your hair. So this is something to be aware of if this is something you're gonna be trying, as I have mentioned in my types of hair dye video. And last but not least, another color I have tried that I neither love or hate, but I do think I would love it if I could try more of them, is Pravana. I'm a huge fan of Pravana's content, whether it's on YouTube or on Instagram. I love all the stuff they're coming up with. It looks super cool, and I wish I had better access to it. So the reason why I haven't tried them as much is because it's really hard for me to buy them here in Canada. There aren't really any stores that I know of that sell them in person. Even on Amazon, I do find that it's mostly on the US Amazon, and I have purchased some in the past
where I would have to ship it to a US address and then I would go pick it up past the border using a letter carrier service.
With all that aside, now you know what I love, what I hate, and what the pros and cons are. Now we can jump right into breaking down all of the different looks. Let's go! For this upcoming section, I've created little recipe cards showing you what the fresh color of each dye job looks like, what they faded to, how to mix these colors, and swatches of what your dye should look like before you apply. If there are any pros and cons that I feel should be mentioned with any particular color, I will definitely let you guys know. I'm going to try to keep everything as short and concise as possible so that we can get through everything in one go. This took so much work, but I hope you guys will enjoy it and hopefully find it helpful. Please consider giving this video a like or leaving a comment, as it really helps support this channel. A little side note before we get into it is that the recipes are based on memory, so they won't be exact, but if you use these as a starting point to create a color that matches the swatches that I've presented here, then it should get you to a pretty similar result as long as we are starting with a similar hair color. Which leads me into my next note: the hair color you start with will greatly affect how your final results turn out. As I mentioned before, a platinum blonde base will produce the best colors. Whenever possible, I will show you what hair color I started off with so you have an idea of why the results are the way they are. And since I've gone to the salon for a few of these dye jobs, I'll also be sharing a couple of those, as they may have affected how I approach the colors that came afterwards. With that aside, let's jump right into it. Alright, starting with my most recent hair color, which I've been rocking for over a year now, is this blue-black color. In early 2020, I decided to stop bleaching my hair, so in order to blend everything into my natural black hair color, I went with a dark blue to light blue ombre made with a mixture of Arctic Fox Blue Jean Baby, Arctic Fox Transylvania, and conditioner. The conditioner I use for all of these colors is the Tresemme Color Revitalized conditioner. It smells good and is pretty affordable, so I always have a bottle or two laying around. I love this color so much. It lasts quite long and fades really nicely. Lately, I've actually been adding a touch of virgin pink in this mixture to give my hair a slightly purple tinge, and I'm totally loving it. The only downside to note is that this color, when left on any surface for longer than a minute, will stain whatever it is that you have. So you'll have to be extra careful in protecting your surfaces when using this. And for the first 2 weeks, whenever you see a piece of hair on your counter or on your floor, pick it up. Because the moment that baby gets wet, it is leaving a blue streak on your surface. This is pretty annoying and is really quite difficult to get rid of, but it shouldn't be an issue after the first 2 weeks. If you'd love to hear some of my tips on how to protect your surfaces from dye stains, make sure you watch my silly hair hacks. Now we're going to go back in time to the very first time I attempted this blue-black color. Back then, I used mostly Blue Jean Baby with much less Transylvania, and you can see that the results are, well, much more blue. As I mentioned earlier, Arctic Fox colors blend really nicely and easily with each other, so the gradient effect was pretty easy to achieve. However, because it blends so well together, prior to the first or second wash, it might almost look like it's just one color. In half of these photos, I'm wearing extensions, but you can see over here that the moment after I dyed it, everything looked pretty blended, but as it faded, the ombre became much more apparent. Since these are the same dyes from the previous look, the pros and cons are the same, just make sure you watch out not to stain your surfaces. Apart from the tips I recommended in my hair hacks video, it would also be beneficial to use darker towels, darker pillowcases, and picking up any stray hairs, and always drying your hair thoroughly before doing anything else. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Arctic Fox colors are very long-lasting. I I had one bottle of each of these colors that I bought at the beginning of 2020, and I am still using those very same bottles today, with a lot more to go on. So if you're looking for a fun, long-lasting color, then Arctic Fox is the way to go. Okay, we're going to jump backwards in time a bit because this color will kind of affect the colors that follow. This is actually a dye job I got at a salon. The stylist was using the colors Pastel Candy and Pastel Lavender from Schwarzkopf Professional's Igora line. As I've mentioned in my salon versus DIY video, I don't really recommend bleaching your hair at home when you have a substantial amount of roots, and as you can see here, my roots are quite long, so that's why I went to the salon for this one. One important thing to note here is that in the beginning we were going for mostly a full head of pastel candy color and lavender at the top to give everything more dimension, but despite my hair being quite light, it didn't really look like anything really happened after our first attempt. So we actually had to go in a second time with more of the lavender. Although this color didn't last very long, it faded really nicely. All the colors faded evenly, and by the end of the month, it was almost completely back to being blonde. I love how the color looks about 2 weeks in because the fresh color is actually quite purple, and with this haircut, every time I looked in the mirror, all I could think of was this. After the color faded, I tried to recreate the same color at home. I pretty much just used whatever I had laying around, which was Manic Panic's Purple Haze and Manic Panic's Fuchsia Shock. As you can see here, I usually use the same colors for the top of my head and the bottom, but I use a different ratio to create a dark to light gradient to give my hair some depth. The thing with most Manic Panic looks though is that the colors go on quite bright most of the time, even when it's diluted. In different lighting, it almost looks like it's too much, but honestly, Manic Panic fades so quickly that within a week, it was the absolute perfect blend of colors that I had hoped for. But by 2 weeks in, apart from the darker purple at the roots, the colors were nearly all gone. A recurring theme in my life is that whenever there is a big event, photo shoot, or vacation, I will without a doubt dye my hair beforehand. A fresh head of color makes me feel so good and way more confident and ready to face the world. The color I used this time was Amethyst Ashes. I really liked this color, but it didn't last very long. I usually buy my Manic Panics in person, and the stores near my house don't always have a wide selection of color. But I think if I see this color again, I will definitely buy a few and use it directly out of the tub rather than diluting it with a conditioner since the color is already quite light as it is. Using it directly out of the tub will ensure a longer lasting color. As a side note, the color that I started off with was like this, where most of my previous colors had already faded, and I had touched up my roots with 2 rounds of bleach and toning it with Wella Color Charm T18. It's very important for me to show the before pictures because it will really affect how your results come out. It's not super obvious here, but my roots were still quite yellow despite me toning them. Since my natural hair is a very dark black, it usually takes about 3 rounds of bleach and toner before I can get it nice and ashy. Very pale yellow is usually a good enough starting point, so I just left it at that. It's because I'm lazy. Okay, so when that faded, I actually wanted to go blonde because I was going to attend a wedding in Asia later that month and I didn't want to stand out too much. But I also wanted to make sure that I can jump right back on the rainbow train once the wedding was over. So instead of going for my usual T18 toner, I went with the Wella Color Charm T27 Medium Beige Blonde, which is supposed to look like this. But for whatever reason, I came out looking like Draco Malfoy, and oh my gosh, I cannot look like Draco Malfoy for my best friend's wedding. It's not a good look for me. I think what went wrong is that this color is meant for hair lightened to a yellow, but my hair was already a pale yellow. I don't know. That's the only explanation I can think of. At this point, there was no way I could go in with another round of anything that required a developer because my hair was already so rough from all the processing. Because yes, although you don't leave the toner in for very long, the fact that you just bleached your hair and you're going in with another round of developer, this is going to damage your hair. So I did what I knew best, which was going pink. Now, it's my first time using Arctic Fox here, but what I didn't know was that unlike Manic Panic's rule of mixing everything one shade darker than what you're hoping to achieve, it's actually quite potent. So I really could have gone much lighter because what I had hoped for was more of a pastel color, but instead of creating a subtle look, I was this extremely bright pink, even though I had diluted the dye so much. But you know, since I'm used to Manic Panic colors, I figured it's fine. It will fade in a week. I'm going to Asia and I'll be washing my hair every day to make sure it fades fast. But it was actually nearly just as bright, which was both a blessing and a curse because I love having pink hair. So long-lasting pink hair is just such a dream. But in this case, I was trying to be subtle about it and it was just a bit of a struggle. I would love to do this look all over again if I ever decide to go blonde again, but for now, I shall be blue. The really great thing about this color is that unlike its blue counterparts, the Arctic Fox Virgin Pink does not stain your things. I still recommend protecting your surfaces while you dye your hair, as you should always do, but there's not much to worry about. There's not as much to worry about in terms of leaving pink stains everywhere afterwards. However, it is important to note that I did not use very much of the dye at all, so this may also play a role in how much the dye were staining my things, which was not at all. Okay, we are now going to jump back in time to the color before all of this purple and pink goodness, which happens to be my wedding hair. This is by far the most expensive hair dyeing job ever, coming in at a total of $1,000. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't think it was worth it at all, even though it was quite nice. But hey, I guess once in a lifetime, I don't know. The hair color I was hoping to achieve was this one, a beautiful metallic-y purpley gray. My starting point was this blonde ombre, which had faded from my previous attempt to achieve this look at the same salon. This color was my absolute favorite color of all time, and somehow it was only half the price. I loved it, and despite it still being quite expensive, I felt like it was worth it. I had gotten this hair about 8 months before my wedding so that we could take engagement photos, and in between that time and the wedding, I did not touch my hair at all. When I went back to the salon, their first attempt to bring the blonde all the way up my head was more or less a fail. I had to go back a second time, which is why this dye job cost double the first one. Though some salons will break up your sessions into 2 for the same price, this one charged me twice, which is fair because it does take the whole day every time I went in. But man, that was steep. But hey, this is my big day, so my hair needs to be killing it. The outcome from the second attempt was not as desirable as the one they had done for my engagement photos. I have no idea why. It could be that the dark dye they used from the first time was hard to lift, but from what I could see, it seemed like it was mostly faded already from when I had first arrived. Whatever. At this point, the wedding was in 2 days, so I'll take it. It is not what I had in mind, but I'm happy with it. I pretty much didn't wash my hair until the day of the wedding, and oh man, literally all of the purple and ashy tones from the top was gone after the first wash. I had even purchased the shampoo that the stylist told me to use, so honestly I was extremely disappointed. And also, like, what is up with this weird dark patch on the back of my head? I never would have realized this if not for the hundreds of photos of the back of my head that I had paid for. Anyway, I had the most amazing day ever, but I can't say I was completely happy with the expensive dye job. Prior to this, I was actually on the hunt to find the perfect hair colorist to do my wedding hair. About 1.5 years before my wedding happened, I found this stylist on Instagram to recreate this look that they have previously done for someone else. My hair looked like this when I arrived, and it looked like it was a bright, fiery, hot pink when I left. In the sun, it was actually almost red. Completely not what I had asked for. She told me that it would fade into the pink I had originally wanted, but I knew from experience that she was totally bluffing. My hair was also completely damaged by the end of this. She had gone in with multiple rounds of bleach with a very high volume developer, and my hair was already bleached from before, so watching her do that was actually kind of stressful. I later found out that one of my friends had also gone to the same place, and her hair was so damaged that some of it had fallen off, just broke off in the middle. Absolutely terrifying. This is why in my salon versus DIY video, I recommend you to do very thorough research before choosing a salon. Anyway, I went on a Mexico trip with my family shortly after this dye job, and colors tend to fade quite quickly in the sun. So within a month, my hair was this bronzy pink color, and shortly after the trip ended, it was just this dirty blonde color again. So far, we've been jumping back and forth in the timeline of my life. But now we're actually going to go way back to the time when I first embarked on this rainbow journey. It was a bit of a rough ride. I had found this really amazing colorist, again, on Instagram, but he was no longer taking on any more clients. His salon recommended a different stylist to me, so I just went with it. Worst mistake ever. She definitely seemed like she had no experience dyeing Asian hair, and it was really strange because she wasn't even using any gloves with bleach. She was just rubbing it into my hair with her hands. No gloves, no brush. Like, girl, what are you doing? Cover those hands! Our attempt at reaching a blonde ombre took 2 sessions and came out this orangey, brassy mess. Later that month, I went to a different salon to attempt a full head of ash blonde. They gave me this really nice cool shade of gray, which they promised would fade into a nice ash blonde. And it did! After that, my rainbow hair journey began. I watched some YouTube videos, but I actually knew close to nothing about hair color in the beginning. My first attempt at reaching a pastel pink was this extremely hot pink mess. It is important to note that for all colors that are already a pastel color, to not dilute it and to simply use it out of the tub and make sure to get enough of it to cover your whole head. Since I did not have enough of the pastel color to cover my whole head, I mixed hot pink with conditioner along with the pastel cotton candy color. But even with the diluted hot pink, it was still too bright. Luckily, after a month, it was this really fun pastel color, which I am still quite fond of to this day. This eventually faded into an ashy blonde color, but of course, my roots were still growing out black. So once it was about an inch long, I attempted my first root touch-up at home. After 2 rounds of bleach and 1 round of T18, I achieved this yellowy mess. But after going back in with another round of bleach and tone, everything blended together much better. This all fades to a slightly less gray blonde tone, so when it was more blonde, I decided to give pastel pink another go, this time only on the ends of my hair. It was super cute in the morning, but I think this was the only picture I took that day. And after sitting at the beach all day, the color was basically completely gone. The lesson of the story is that pink fades really fast and diluted pinks fade even faster. So if you're planning to sit on a beach all day, it's just going to vanish into thin air. After that, I attempted a pastel purple. It was actually pretty cute, but as you can see, whenever I am too lazy to touch up my roots, I wear a hat. So I'm really sorry that you can only see the bottom part. Since this color was very light, it did not last very long either. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Manic Panic can be quite streaky if you're not careful with how you're applying your color, which you can totally see right here. And it also fades quite quickly, so if you're someone who loves change and doesn't want to commit to any one color, this could be perfect for you. After a while, it was time to go on vacation again, so yes, I made sure to touch up my roots. Since I was going on vacation, I knew I could go in with a bit of a stronger color since I knew that it was going to fade quite quickly. I wanted to make sure my color lasted the whole time I was away, so I created this purple using Fuchsia Shock and Atomic Turquoise, blending into more of a pinky purple color at the bottom. In all my years of hair dyeing, it seems like most pink dyes fade quicker than the blue dyes, and in fact, blue is actually quite difficult to get out of your hair. But what's interesting is that when you mix your own purples, sometimes the pink goes first and you're left with this blue tint, which is quite fun. After that, I was honestly getting a little tired of bleaching my hair, so I thought I'd go for a darker purple to a light purple ombre to help blend the colors into my black roots. To do this, I figured I'd get a darker blue to mix into the colors that I already had at home. So I created this Manic Panic's After Midnight, Atomic Turquoise, and Hot Hot Pink concoction. Oh my goodness, if you're going for a classy purple, then this is not for you. The After Midnight color can be so wild, especially in the sun. I don't even know how to describe it. This was honestly a bit too much for me, but luckily it calmed down about a week later and became so beautiful. I think this 1 week and 1.5 week color is such a dream. I would totally do it again despite the madness in the first few days. At about 2 weeks time, there was only mostly blue left in my hair. And instead of letting my hair fade all the way to blonde this time, I just continued to retouch with more purple. Since the first purple I attempted was so crazy bright with that After Midnight color, I toned that one down this time and bumped up the pink. I absolutely loved this, and since my hair at the bottom was still blue when I dyed it, the light layer of purple I dyed on top faded to this really nice, gorgeous blue color afterwards and made me feel like a mermaid. Out of all the colors I have ever dyed, the color I had 1 to 2 weeks in was the one I received the most compliments for. People literally stopped me at the mall to talk about my hair with me. It was super rewarding because I think we can tell by now that I spend way too much time doing my own hair. So knowing that other people also liked it was a huge plus. As many of my subscribers may know, I love Halloween. And at this time, my husband was in love with League of Legends. So I dressed up as one of his favorite characters, Jinx. This was definitely one of my favorite costumes. I had made all these fake bullets with crayons and it looked really cool, but also smelled like childhood. Now instead of wearing a wig as most cosplayers might do, I just dyed my hair. Now I had to touch up my roots again to make this costume work out, but I also had to get rid of the purple that was still lingering in my hair. Around that time, I had saw this YouTuber use a color remover in her video and I decided to give that a try. Please do not use a color remover. It smells so bad. It's like your bathroom was suddenly completely filled with butts. In hindsight, I think it would have been better to just go in with a bleach wash. But anyway, after my usual routine, I covered my head with dye, and this time it's just Atomic Turquoise. And it was absolutely perfect for my costume. In my regular life though, I was really unsure about how I was going to rock this. I really felt like I couldn't pull it off, so I jumped right back into purple after only about 2 days. Since I never actually measure my dye, instead of the purple that I had actually wanted, I accidentally hit the After Midnight too hard again. It was kind of intense for a hot minute, but it did that really amazing fade again, which I will forever love. In about 5 weeks time, it faded to this silvery purple look, and while we have this picture in front of us, I just want to mention that because most of your shampoo is concentrated on your scalp, over a long period of time, that color will revert back to the state of nothing, faster than the bottom half, unless there were less dye at the bottom to start with. So with my previous looks where the top half always had more dye than the bottom half, this was not so much of an issue, but with this look, since I had been full-blown turquoise underneath, the blue was still lingering at the ends. I actually don't mind this at all, but it might be something to keep in mind depending on what looks you're going for. Just remember, the colors that are underneath always matter. Anyway, with Halloween out of the way, it's time for Christmas. I dyed this at the start of December to attend some Christmas parties, and this time I went back to purple, but without the After Midnight color. Since my hair was still blue at the bottom, it looked darker than the top. This color had such a beautiful fade. One thing to note though is that if you look closely at the top of my head, you'll notice some brassiness. I don't have any before pictures, but I can tell you right now that I definitely only bleached my roots twice instead of 3 times and did not tone my hair with my usual Wella T18. Since purple is the opposite color to yellow, I figured that the color would be dark enough to cancel out any brassiness underneath. And I mean, it sort of does the job and is definitely less damaging, but eventually it's just going to fade back into brassiness, which you can totally tell by how my selfies are constantly moving lower and lower, so you can can no longer see the top of my head. But anyway, by the time this was mostly faded, it was New Year's Eve and my roots were probably sticking out by a centimeter. So I went ahead and touched it up to make sure that my hair is New Year's ready. This time I did a toned down version of the Christmas color, and I actually mostly just focused on the top to keep more of that grayish tone at the bottom from before. I love this color. It looks great, it fades great, and surprisingly it was still looking quite pink 1 month in. This next color though has got to be another one of my favorites. It's the purple gray ombre, which I love. This time I'm using Pravana Chroma Silk colors in violet, black, silver, and lavender. My hair was super long at this point, so instead of using just 2 colors, I actually blended 4 different tones starting from the top of my head all the way to the bottom. I loved this so much. However, these colors are really hard to buy in my area, so I wasn't able to repeat this look at all. I also wanted to say that at the end of 1.5 months, although the color wasn't really purple anymore, it still left sort of a stain. I think that if I left it alone long enough, it will probably fade out completely, but I decided to just add on to it as usual. Despite loving Pravana's colors, I went back to Manic Panic, which I know for sure I can always buy. This time I tried a new combination using Purple Haze, After Midnight, and Fuchsia Shock. Instead of mixing 2 colors, I just mixed the purple and then diluted a little bit using conditioner for the bottom half. I really like this look too. It was a bit brighter than the Pravana look and slightly less magical, but it was a good replacement. I also just want to point out that at this point, I have completely given up on touching up my roots. Lazy! If you've been watching my videos for a while now, you would have definitely heard of my friend Etsuko. We always go on these photo dates together and we have such a good time. Anyway, we were doing this shoot in the water and I decided to give the purple to blue ombre a go. This next fact might be kind of obvious, but if your hair has any yellowness in it, your blues will definitely fade green, because blue and yellow makes green. But if your hair is almost white before you dyed it blue, then it will fade light blue. I pretty much didn't dye my hair for a while at this point because I had started to go to school and the professor had scared us about looking professional while we attend class. So I was a little bit scared, but Etsuko and I were doing yet another photo shoot. Yay! So I really wanted to make sure that I looked my best for this because I always love how her photos turn out and I always want to treasure them forever. For a more subtle, professional, school-appropriate look, I decided to give this new color a try. It was Manic Panic's Blue Steel, which was sort of a bluish-gray color. I loved it. However, since it was a lighter color, it took 2 jars in order to reach this color. In hindsight, I wish I figured out a darker blend for the top of my head so that this black would blend in more nicely into the light parts, but hindsight 2020, so we'll just leave it at that. After that, I decided to try a darker gray color and I tried the one and only Argan Oil Chrome Dye. It was a very nice dark gray color, but I'm not sure if maybe I had mixed something else into it, or perhaps it was the Manic Panic Blue Steel that left a greenish tint, but this faded very green, only in the best kind of way though. At this point, it was time to graduate again, and knowing me, I definitely dye my hair before getting my photos taken. So here's the hair I had when I had my grad photos done. Absolutely loved it. In this point in time, I had finally ran out of the atomic turquoise that is almost always under my sink, and instead I used Manic Panic's Shocking Blue. Wow, it is gorgeous. It looks perfect in indoor lighting, but like most Manic Panic colors, it still looks very intense in sunlight. And always a quick and fun fade. Since I had gone on with this purple rain for so long, I decided to go dark pink to light pink. It didn't really turn out as I had imagined, but I liked it all the same. What I would do differently if I were to do this look again is to mix a little bit more dye into the lighter shade because it was a little bit too light for my taste. It is important to note that I was in Asia for 2 weeks after dyeing my hair. In addition to how I was showering once or twice a day because of the heat there also made my colors fade extra fast. So if you live in a hot climate, I don't think these colors are for you. You might want to try Arctic Fox instead. Oh man, what a mess. My roots here have nearly taken over my head, and the parts of it that I didn't bleach enough and didn't tone properly are becoming extremely obvious. I attempted to cover that up with a dark to light purple ombre using a similar mixture to the one I used for my grad photos, but it wasn't quite dark enough. This is what happens when the hair underneath is not light enough to take on the colors you put on top, because the hair you have underneath always matters. Anyway, this continued to look weird for the rest of the month, but colors are always fun to have nonetheless. Once that had completely faded, I somehow failed some more with this pastel lilac color. And obviously my previous problem persisted, because the color I had underneath here was still too dark to take on any pastel tones. The color looked quite nice on the ends of my hair where they were light enough, but honestly not the best look I've ever created. I also want to note that the one and only colors also come in tubes like the Ion colors, and they both have a toothpaste-like consistency, unlike the yogurty, lotiony Manic Panics and Arctic Foxes. Of course, I didn't let that last too long. This black-brown lilac mess was too unbearable. I decided to attempt the dark pink to light pink again, and this time with 3 different mixes using Fuchsia Shock and my trusty conditioner. I loved this color, but I would love it more if I bleached the top half of my hair properly, so that it's not so brassy. I think this is a beautiful color for anyone whose hair is a level 9 or level 10, but this is also true with most colors. When that faded, I attempted the purple ombre from my grad photos again, and it was a success! I used a bit more fuchsia this time. It faded to a purple gray, then a pinkish gray, and then all the way back down to a dark grayish blonde. Since we had a trip to Bali coming up where we were attending a wedding, I decided to just go blonde. I had done 3 rounds of bleach to lighten my roots and toned it with Wella T11 Lightest Beige Blonde. However, as you guys know, I do not recommend bleaching your hair at home if you have too much roots. It was a huge struggle trying to get everything to match, and the struggle was really not worth it for me. So when my roots grew out again, I decided to go with a permanent color, so that I don't have to deal with bleaching my hair ever again. I decided that I was so tired of it, and coloring my hair every few weeks was just too time consuming, and I was getting too lazy to do anything about it, so I figured permanent colors must be my solution. The color I chose was the one and only Argan Oil line in 5RV and 4RV. Being a permanent color, you will need to mix it with developer. There are very specific directions on the box, so if you decide to go with this look, make sure you follow the instructions that are there. This was a fun color, but man, it was just not permanent. Please excuse this strange picture. I was working on yet another costume, but this one wasn't really working out. As you can see here though, within 5 days, it was already not even really that purple anymore. This faded so fast, but at the same time, never really completely left me. It stained my hair and just wouldn't come out. I also wanted to mention that because this uses developer, it definitely further damaged my hair. Which is why when the color didn't come out, I didn't really want to go in with another round of bleach to get it out. It was extremely frustrating. Around this time, I had the feeling that Kevin was going to propose to me, so I felt like I really needed to dye my hair again. I tried to touch it up with a similar purple concoction to before, but it was definitely a bit light for the dark stained hair that I had. But I was right, and he proposed that weekend, and I was forever a happy lady. And as you can see here, at the end of the 2 months, we're back to the same hair I had before when I started my search for the perfect colorist. So we've come full circle in my rainbow hair journey. One last product that I really want to mention is the Overtone hair conditioner and hair mask, which I've tried as an attempt to retain my color longer. Really not a fan. If you're going to sit naked in the shower with a purple hair mask that you're slapping over your wet hair, you might as well just go ahead and re-dye it. I wasn't really able to evenly cover my hair with the purple conditioner in a way that created a nice purple effect, and there really wasn't enough conditioner to last me more than a month if I had really wanted everything to stay purple. It wasn't really working out for me, so this is a product I do not recommend. If you made it to the end, I am completely shocked. Thank you so much for staying and listening to me share my stories and ramble on about my hair. I'm super passionate about dyeing my hair, and I really do have a lot of fun dyeing it. So hopefully these insights will help you with your hair journey so you can create the hair color of your dreams. When I make my next hair video, I'll go into more detail about how I apply color on my hair, how I make the colors blend, and various tips for when you're actually dyeing your hair. I should have that ready in the upcoming weeks, but I'd love to take a short break from all this hair business and share some other stuff with you guys. Because this video has taken me over a month to create and I'm just so haired out. So in my next video, we're going to switch things up a bit. Let me know in the comments which one of these looks were your favorite. I always love chatting with you guys in the comment section, so don't be shy. Let me know what you're thinking. Sending you lots of love. See you all very soon.